The 2026 congressional election is actually an existential threat to Donald Trump. If the Democrats take control of Congress, then one can only imagine the volume of investigations that will then ensue. We all know that this is the most corrupt administration in history. There's a whole swathe of corrupt acts that the government is engaged in almost a daily basis. Trump and his family are making billions and billions of dollars from this administration. From crypto schemes, to private members clubs, to privileged access for certain people, to receiving gifts worth hundreds of millions of dollars from foreign entities and governments. This government is basically for sale. And things that are going on that have never ever happened in American history before. So the amount of investigations, the sheer volume of investigations that will ensue, will almost certainly be an existential threat to Donald Trump. Now, this is the kind of thing that happens frequently to authoritarian rulers. They wade so deeply into the muddy swamp of corruption that they reach a point of no return where they have no choice but to remain in office. Because the minute they even consider leaving office, they know that what's going to happen is eventually going to result in their jailing. They're eventually going to get prosecuted for their crimes and eventually get jailed, which is why they have to retain themselves in office. They have to keep hold of power just to stay out of jail. That's exactly the case, for example, with Putin. If he was ever to be removed from office, or if he ever stood down from office, his successors would eventually have to put him into jail because the crimes would come to light. There wouldn't be so much sort of suppression of the information that there is at the moment, and then he'd eventually, find his way in a gulag. So it's the same basically with Trump now. They've got to that stage where they have to prevent democracy from taking place now in order just to stay free. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how Trump is actually planning now to subvert democracy in the 2026 congressional election. And the key parts of this are emerging before our eyes. So I'm going to go through that in some detail in this video. Now, the plan of how Trump plans to subvert democracy in the 2026 congressional election is actually materializing before our eyes. See, none of this is being done very much in secret. It's being done out in the open, and there's a reason for that too, which I'll explain. So all the different key components to this plan is now before us. And so we can go through them one by one. Altogether, there's 4 components to this plan. There's a 4-part plan leading to the way in which he's eventually going to do this. Now, the first thing he's doing is very clear. He's trying to stack up Republican seats across the country. So he's overtly and openly told Texas, you need to redistrict your different seats in Congress in a way that ensures you get another 5 or 6 extra Republican seats. Now, that's never happened historically. See, historically, people talk about redistricting in order to account for demographic changes. I mean, that's sort of a euphemism because we know that underneath it, the party in charge is trying to redistrict in a way that it works to their advantage. But they've never done it so nakedly. And anyway, this isn't a time to redistrict. It happens once every few years. This isn't due yet. But Trump has said openly, listen, I just need you to get me a few more seats from Texas. He's told that openly, in the same way that he told the Georgia Attorney General that, look, after the 2020 election, I just need you to get me another sort of few thousand votes. And he told them the exact number that he needed to win. And he's told the same thing to Texas. So, and instead of Texas responding like Georgia did and saying, I'm sorry, Mr. President, this isn't constitutional. We can't just go ahead and create more seats for you. They didn't. They went ahead and slavishly followed orders. So now their sort of a representative body has gone ahead and passed legislation to hand the Republicans a few extra seats. And the governor is now signing that into law. So he's nakedly, openly stacking Congress with extra Republican seats by completely contravening the rules and essentially just creating more seats. So he's going ahead and doing that, and he's doing that openly in front of everybody. The other thing he's doing is something that apparently he was advised to do by Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin, of all people. He said openly that this is something that Vladimir said to me, and when we were chatting together in the Beast. So in that one-on-one time that Putin had with Trump, he started feeding him information about how to subvert democracy. Because we know that Putin isn't somebody who cares about democratic rules and norms. He's totally run roughshod over them and destroyed them in his own country. International monitors have consistently said that for decades now Russia has not had free and fair elections. They rig things completely to make sure Putin wins. And so Putin is not giving him advice about how to improve American democracy, he's giving him advice about how to destroy it. And the advice he gave is don't accept mail-in ballots. Putin apparently told him, you're the only country that takes mail-in ballots, this is a stupid way to run democracies, you shouldn't do it. This is of course a complete lie. There are 32 countries that use mail-in ballots. Many long-standing democratic countries, including throughout Europe, use mail-in ballots. It is not an aberration, it is not something that leads to widespread voter fraud at all. But Trump, nevertheless, is determined to abolish them. What's the real reason? Well, he sees an advantage in that.
And watch how people who mail in their ballots tend to vote. Historically, not that big a split, but the pandemic election in 2020, a seismic shift in how Democrats versus Republicans voted. That difference shrank in 2024, but it's possible this only reinforces Trump's belief that the surge in mail-in voting hurt him in 2020, that maybe the decrease in mail-in voting helped him in 2024.
So it is clearly Trump's belief that because more Democrats vote on a mail-in basis than Republicans, he will again stack the cards in his favour even more. So first of all, he's eking out more Republican seats, and secondly, he's trying to minimise the possibility of Democrats voting. Now, while Trump is saying that he's going to issue executive orders that ban mail-in voting, the truth is that he doesn't actually have that power. The president is not able to ban mail-in voting. That's something that the states decide, and each state has their own policy and way of doing it. But Trump is going out of his way to say that that's something he's going to do. What this essentially is a presidential power grab. He's trying to gain himself the power to do that, or at least the perception of having the power to do that. This way, one of two things happens. Either the Supreme Court accepts it in the end because it will be challenged, and then he's extended his power, or even if the Supreme Court doesn't accept it, all Republican states will follow suit. So, in other words, his writ, his executive order, will have been followed by a big chunk of the whole of the US. So that way he's shown that at the very least, his executive order has teeth amongst a big chunk of the country. So he's going to challenge the actual existing order in terms of who has the power to do these things. So at the very least, he's going to demonstrate that he has the power to push this out amongst most of the country. What he needs is the perception of power. The power itself is one thing, that's dictated by the Constitution, but he needs the perception of having this power so that he's then able to use that perception. And remember, perception of power is sort of 3/5 of power itself. So he's then able to use that power at a future moment in order to actually control the result. Because what he wants to eventually do is to make a declaration about the result. When 2026 comes, he wants to be able to say, well, this state was corrupt, this result must be nullified. He wants to be able to pick and choose who comes through in the end. And so he's trying to give himself that power, that perception of power. So he's building up that authority right now. And as it stands, with regards to this particular ploy, the notion that he can personally determine that mail-in ballots are outlawed, he'll probably get his way amongst a big chunk of the country, if not all of it. And so that way he can start to build up that sense of power that he will then eventually use to make a declaration about the result itself, which is what he will do. Be no doubt about that in 2026. He's not going to say, oh yes, we lost fair and square, the Democrats have a majority, we're going to have to work together across the aisle. He won't say any of those things. You know it. Because he's never admitted defeat in any election. And this election actually has more at stake than almost any in the past, because it's a real existential threat to him and his own liberty. He may not be prosecutable right now, but eventually, He may be, because not all of these things he's done are in the purview of the presidency and about the actions he's taken in his role as president, which is why they may fall into the remit of prosecutable. And certainly all the people around him would fall into that remit too. So, in order to avoid the calamity that might follow, he's having to take all these steps. And a key one among them is being able to declare the result of the 2026 election. Now, there is a reason that Washington DC and other blue states are now being targeted for deployment by National Guard and ICE. So he's basically getting a sort of coalescence of military personnel to start to roam the streets of blue states and Washington DC. It started in DC, started before that actually in LA. Now it's in DC, and he's also talked about Chicago, and he's talking about other cities in blue states. The reason he's ultimately doing that is because there will be a backlash on the streets in 2026 when he starts to declare the result himself. When he's gerrymandered as much as possible, when he suppressed the Democratic vote as much as possible, and if it still doesn't work, which it probably still won't, he will then try and put himself in a position where he declares the results. And what will then happen is that there will be a desire of ordinary, freedom-loving people across America, of which the majority are, to come out onto the streets and protest against that. But by that point, there will have been a large volume of military personnel on the streets that he's building up in order to quell that uprising. Now, as I often say in these videos, he's not doing these things strategically. He's not playing like a game of chess, trying to sort of plan ahead 3 steps ahead. He does these things instinctively. He is an authoritarian to every cell of his body, so he kind of knows what to do without necessarily thinking forward. He's moving sort of pieces around, and those pieces happen to fall into place because this is exactly how his psyche works. He ends up creating a situation where he can dominate others ruthlessly and without any concern or empathy for other people's position. So what he's doing now is creating a scenario where there will be troops across a whole range of states, the exact states that are going to come out and protest against his attempt to subvert the 2026 elections. And interestingly, lots of people have noticed it, including Bill Maher. Now, Bill Maher has had a sort of love-hate relationship with Trump, and we can't always take him seriously because he started saying about the things that he admired about Trump recently after a White House visit. However, he's coming back into line now, and he's made a pretty decent observation here.
First, create a masked police force. Get people used to looking at that. Normalize snatching people off the street. Get them used to that. Normalize seeing the National Guard and the military on the street. Then start talking about crime in the capital, which is basically, has always been a fairly crime-ridden city. This is our nation's capital where elections are decided. And then because the crime is so bad, have other states start sending their troops, not just the National Guard there in D.C., but now at least 6 other states are sending their troops, which then Trump can then federalize. So you're having many states' troops on the ground there, and now they're under federal control. So you have in the capital a sort of permanent police presence. So when an election dispute might come up, just hypothetically, I don't want to be a big pessimist, and I'm going to pretend for the rest of the duration that the Democrats do have a chance of winning, and they might win the next election. I just don't think they're ever going to take power, because this is what's going to happen. Because I think this coup is going to go off a lot smoother than the last one.
So overall, there's a few things that Trump is doing, a few discrete steps he's doing right now. He's trying to build up the Republican vote by asking different Republican states, he started with Texas, he's going to Ohio and other places, to gerrymander and squeeze out as many Republican wins as possible. And he's saying that openly and on purpose in order to demonstrate his power and in order to stack the cards up in his favor. He's also trying to take away cards from the Democrats by cancelling mail-in voting. He believes that the effect of that will ultimately be to reduce the Democrat vote and reduce the number of seats that they win. And even if none of that works, and it's quite possible none of that will actually work because there's likely to be a big overwhelming tide against him and against the Republicans in the 2026 election. Even if none of that works, he wants to get himself into a position where his executive orders are taken more and more seriously, and with the help from Republican governors in states across the country, they can give the increasing impression that his executive orders, even if they are contravening the Constitution, still need to be taken as writ, as law. And so he wants to get to a stage where even if the other ploys don't work, he can declare a result, or he can nullify some results and say that he only accepts this Congress. And then what he'll have is a whole swathe of military on the streets in the exact places where people will come out and protest against that, ready to quell and quash them straight away. So the plan is hidden in plain sight. The trajectory is clear. The destination, the desire, the objective is certain. This is where we are headed. And 2026 will not be an ordinary series of elections. We are heading to a confluence, to a junction in the history of America. To be forewarned is to be prepared. And that's what we need to do right now. I hope you like my video. As a psychiatrist who loves politics and economics and philosophy, I love to make videos like this, and you can really help promote this video to other people and get it on your feed more by liking and commenting and subscribing to the video as well. We have a wonderful community of people here who comment and support each other through this very traumatic period of world history that we're going through right now. I also hope you consider becoming a subscriber to the channel and also subscribing to my e-newsletter. There's a link in the description, and that way we can stay in touch outside the channel, so you can keep abreast of all of the content that I'm making on an ongoing basis. The latest of which actually is my latest book called We the People. Very, very proud of this book. It's actually a novel, a fiction book written by myself and the famous award-winning author T.J. McGregor. Together we wrote a book about what the future might look like. Bit of a dystopian novel, but what might happen if autocracy goes to its next stage, AI predicting the potential end of humanity. I actually made a video about that, it really happened. And how things might pan out in this dystopian world, and actually how a band of committed, passionate, progressive people managed to change the trajectory, and not in the way that you think. It's not just by running a candidate and opposing the autocrat, but actually by deepening the democracy that we have and engaging in a real participatory form of democracy that sort of shifts the needle and gets us back to basics and helps us sort of rebuild our democracy. And that's within the context of a really compelling, gripping story, a bunch of fascinating characters, and I assure you, you will not be able to sort of stop turning the page until you get to the end of the book. That's what all the reviewers have said so far. Lots of people love it, and I hope you can get it. You can get it on Amazon, any of the global Amazon bookstores out there. Please do order your copy of We the People. Just put We the People Russell Razzaque and you'll be able to find it inside Amazon as well. Also, I hope you consider becoming a member of the channel. You can subscribe to a couple of different membership levels. All members of the channel also get some free ebooks that I produce once a month. You can buy those ebooks too from russellsbooks.com. That's russellsbooks.com, and every month I produce a new ebook on that channel, which is really about, these are the non-fiction books I produce with my team, which is really about how to learn about the world around us and the psychologies of the people who govern us, but also how to learn about ourselves, deepen our own self-awareness in a way that helps us navigate this difficult world we're in right now. So those are sort of self-help books that are produced every month, and if you're a member of the channel, you get a sort of 100% discount on those books every month. Otherwise, you can go to russellsbooks.com, as I say, and buy them anytime you like. I really hope you can become a part of this community, as I say. So this sort of supportive community, validating and helping each other, is really worth being a part of, and I hope you can join us as we all join forces to create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.